All right, we are ready to reconvene. Commission meeting number 147 at about 3 o'clock. We are going to go to item number 8B for starters. Director of our Investigations and Enforcement Bureau, Karen Wells.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission.
Good afternoon.
The second item on the agenda for the IEB, which I will address first at the Chair's direction, is a status update for the Region C applications. The applicant, Mass Gaming and Entertainment, has been deemed complete by the IEB for purposes of moving forward with investigation, and we are proceeding. A supplemental document request has gone out for information to update the MGE suitability finding, including information regarding the landowner and partner in the project. So that application is moving along in due course, and I have no real further comment on that, although I believe there is an attorney present for Mass Gaming and Entertainment, which may address the request for continuance by the other applicants. The applicant, KG Urban, received a deficiency notice from the IEB on February 17, 2015, indicating that their application is not administratively complete, as they had not identified and submitted the required forms for an operator and the additional equity contributors that the applicant had indicated would be necessary to complete the project. Subsequent to receipt of that letter, KG has identified Foxwoods Mass LLC as the operator for their project, but has not yet identified the additional equity contributors. Since the application was not complete, although we met with the principals, we did not do a scope of licensing analysis on the proposed operator. The applicant has submitted a request for an extension of the March 16th deadline, which I believe you have received. The applicant, Crossroads, which is partnering with the Somerset Group, received a deficiency notice from the IEB on February 19, 2015, indicating their application was not administratively complete, as they had not identified and submitted the required forms for an operator, and the additional equity contributors the applicant had indicated may be involved to complete the project. Subsequent to receipt of that letter, Crossroads has identified an individual, David Hanlon, as the operator for their project, but has not yet identified additional equity contributors. A preliminary review of the forms which have been submitted suggests that such additional equity contributors will in fact be necessary. The applicant has submitted a request for an extension of the March 16th deadline, which I believe you have also received. So that's the general status, and I believe there are representatives from all three applicants here today that wish to be heard.
Is there a sequence that's logical?
Well, my recommendation to the Commission is that we hear from the representative, and I have the name of my iPads off, the attorney for Mass Gaming and Entertainment. If they want to be heard on the other, objecting to the request for the continuance by the other applicants, we would give that attorney that opportunity, and then hear from KG Urban, and finally Crossroads.
Okay, let's do it in that order. So we'll start with Mass Gaming and Entertainment.
Chairman, members of the Commission.
Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
I'm Attorney Jack Units from Brockton, Massachusetts, and I'm here representing Mr. Carney and Mass Gaming. I'm here to tell you what the status is of our successes to date and where we hope to be in the next 30 days. We signed shortly after January 30th, we commenced to negotiate with the city in earnest about a host community agreement. The agreement was signed, it was filed with the City Council. A request for an election day was filed as well. The City Council unanimously endorsed the agreement and set a date of May 12th for our election. This past week, we filed the zoning bylaw after 2 weeks of working with the city officials, our own city planner, our urban planners, and the city planner. That will be referred out of City Council next Monday night. It'll be referred to the Planning Board, and it'll be referred as well out to the City Council Ordinance Committee. Hearings will ensue in early May on those issues. In addition to that, the ENF will be filed by Rush Street, MGE, on March the 31st. Since this project has begun in Brockton, Rush Street traffic engineer has been working regularly with the Old Colony Planning Council of Brockton to formulate traffic studies. As part of our host community agreement, we agreed to look at 24 different intersections with the city officials as part of that process. In addition to that, in the host community agreement, we agreed to pay the city $10 million a year as a base minimum, with hotel, motel taxes and everything else associated with the project to go to the city as well. The total financial package will be at least $10.5 million to the city going forward. We've set up a number of public hearings. The first week in April will be 2, one for the business community and one for the public at large. They're going to be led by 3 city councils, including the city council president. We've put together an extremely diverse group of supporters, because this project not only promises Brockton $10.5 million a year, it promises Brockton 1,500 sorely needed jobs. The diverse group is going to work with us on the workforce development meetings that we've scheduled for May. They will be providing translators. They will be co-sponsoring our workforce development hearings, and they'll be sending career counselors to those meetings to work with Rush Street and all of us in the process. I just want to briefly talk about the rules, because I know it's going to be an awful tough decision for you. And I understand that competition is important, but this isn't competition between Brockton and New Bedford. We consider New Bedford a sister city. The idea of competition, I think, in the gaming statute was about making sure that communities got the best. They got the maximum amount of investment, they got companies that knew how to operate, and certainly they got a financial team that could help support the casinos in the communities in which they go. Putting together the team that Mr. Carney has assembled with Rush Street and with Clearvest meets all those standards. Rush Street has agreed to invest $650 million in Brockton. And I know there's been talk over the years that this bill was intended to really help the South Coast, New Bedford, and Fall River. And that's unfortunately been Brockton's history. We often get overlooked. We are in the shadow of Boston, and we are crushed sometimes by that very reality. Our unemployment history in Brockton, our troubles in Brockton, are no better than the South Coast. And we don't have the water. We don't have a government that's invested millions to deepen the harbors. What we have, really, is what we can do on our own. You know, when I gave up my law practice in 1995, I didn't do it just to take a pay cut. I do it because I believed in my city. And when I ran for mayor, I ran with a passion that Brockton was worth fighting for. With the help, quite frankly, of your chairman, as Secretary of A&F, we were able to do an awful lot in those 10 years that I was mayor. We built 5 schools, a courthouse, a stadium conference center, and many, many more things that helped Brockton turn around. We had a tremendous resurgence. In fact, when I left office, Money Magazine had ranked us the 3rd fastest growing community in property values in the country after Barnstable County and Malibu Beach County in California. They had gone up almost 300%. What we didn't have, however, was a plan that was sustainable in the future. And when the recession hit, Brockton stumbled, and it continues to stumble. This $10.5 million to Brockton is a godsend. The 1,500 jobs in our diverse community is huge. Rush Street has agreed that not less than 50% of their hirees will come from that diverse community. Our unions are excited about this opportunity. This process will be done by May the 26th because we respect the rules. And we counted back from May the 26th because we believe in the process. Coming out of law, I know that if you play with the rules of evidence, you don't have predictability, you don't have accountability, and you don't have fairness in the process. I don't envy your decision, and my remarks are certainly not intended to be directed at Somerset or New Bedford. But they are being directed in the process, a process we've invested in, worked daily with city officials and local authorities to make it work, and we are ready to present, and what we know will be a very hard election, a positive Vote Yes campaign for Brockton. I just urge you at this point to consider that as probably one of the most important things you can do. So far, I think that this commission has been lauded because it has been transparent, because it has been fair, and because it has treated everybody with a universal amount of respect. In this particular case, we have done everything right, and we will continue to do everything right because our partners believe in doing it right, and our city expects that we will do it right. And I ask this commission to please do it right. Respect where we are. We will be ready on May 26th, and we will keep the process going. Because in the end, the competition isn't between Brockton and New Bedford or Somerset. The competition is with other casinos in New England, and we've assembled the best team that can compete. Even if the tribe someday has the opportunity to build a casino, we will survive. We've planned for it. We're ready for it. Our business models can handle it. I don't think any place else in southeastern Massachusetts can say that. So I urge you, please, to understand what we've gone through, understand how hard we tried to play with the rules, and treat the rules like rules and not guidelines. Thanks very much for your time and your efforts in doing this for our Commonwealth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nice to see you.
Questions, or anything for the mayor? I was just going to say I did enjoy working with the mayor and also having his son as a student of mine when I was a dean. None of that, I think, however, will affect my objectivity in this process. I don't know where I'm going to come down on this, but I would point out that Mass Game and Entertainment would not be a bidder if we had not been flexible on our deadlines, just for the record. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, we also have from KG Urban, I believe Kevin Conroy, the attorney representing KG Urban, Barry Goslin, an equity partner and principal, John Mitchell, the mayor of the city of New Bedford, and Jonathan Silverstein, the attorney representing the city of New Bedford.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor?
Members of the commission.
Good afternoon.
I'm here today to report to the commission that earlier today, New Bedford and KG Urban Enterprises executed a host community agreement to build a gaming facility on the New Bedford waterfront. And I'd like to take a moment to describe for you how we got to that point. And as you know, for several years now, there's been talk about the prospect of a resort facility on the New Bedford waterfront at the site of a defunct power plant that that is still owned by NSTAR, and along with a related property that's owned by Sprague Oil, which is a regional oil shipping company. We from the start, and I've been in office for 3 years, my view on casino gaming has been that if a casino operator wants to set up shop in New Bedford, it would have to be a casino that worked for New Bedford. It would have to be a casino on New Bedford's terms. I have rejected, and continue to reject up until we just signed this agreement, the notion that the mayor of an older industrial city should just say thank you with, based on any expression of interest from any developer, casino or otherwise. It's got to fit. And that means for us, more than anything else, that we set a high bar. Every community is different, and the burden, to my mind, has always been on casino developers to show me how, on balance, what they propose to do would advance New Bedford's long-term economic interest. This is the way we govern in New Bedford. I'm about to explain why I think this does it, why KG Urban has convinced me that they have crossed that bar. Every community is different. Every community that has entertained the prospect of a casino resort recognizes the manifest job benefits. Every casino, certainly of a size that would have the minimum capital expenditure that we require here in Massachusetts would generate a lot of jobs, but it's got to fit. It has to advance the existing and future economic development initiatives. It has to build on the assets of a community. It has to minimize the negative externalities that often come with casinos and that all of you concern yourselves with all the time. And it has to throw off enough economic activity to accelerate positive development. That's what I've been looking for as mayor all the time. And as I said, every community is different, but the question is always the same. Casinos, to my mind, are not strictly ends in themselves, but they are means to other things, and that's really the question. So in New Bedford, a city that is not a satellite of Boston and is not part of the Boston orbit, that is not riding on the rapid growth of Metro Boston, but is some 60 miles away, farther from Boston than Worcester, Providence, or Manchester, New Hampshire. We have to make our own way. We have to focus on our economic assets and to drive what we do very well. And that's what we're doing. We have well thought out, well-developed economic development plans. And I firmly believe that are based, by the way, on assets like our port, the largest commercial fishing port in America, our artistic sector, which is one of the most vibrant in America, and our industrial base. We're still a major manufacturer. But the reality is that we need to accelerate and to capitalize on all of those trends because, as it stands now, we still have one of the highest unemployment rates in Massachusetts. We are in many ways isolated from the rest of the state, and so we have to look for opportunities to lift ourselves up. What KG Urban has presented to me at this point, and I say at this point after some 3 years of talking about it, I believe will accelerate what we're trying to do in New Bedford so that we have a sustainable economy in the long run. We have, and I'll just sketch it out for you. The ink is literally not dry on this document. We signed it some 2 hours ago. We believe that this is a host community agreement that will enable us to reap the reward, all the positives, and to avoid the negatives of a casino development. Let me just sort of sketch out the broad outline. Some 2,000 jobs, permanent jobs, are to be expected as a result of this project. The annual host community payments are $12.5 million exclusive of hotel and meals taxes. A $4.5 million upfront payment. The annual payments will include an escalator that will kick in year 6, so that it will keep up with inflation. We have strong local hiring content, or local hiring requirements in the document as much as the law would allow. Same thing with local procurement. These things are all very important to me. One of the concerns I had with a waterfront casino is the displacement of maritime industrial land. This agreement will permit the usage of a significant portion of the site for commercial fish berthing, which is something that's very much needed, as much of the commercial fishing industry in the Northeast continues to gravitate toward New Bedford. It will also allow us to build a marina on the northern side of the property, again utilizing a finite resource, waterfront land and an industrial port. That is something that was very important to me. Also very important to me is connections to downtown. The KG team was able to redesign their project so that we moved primarily in a number of ways. One of the most important ways is that they moved the hotel, the position of the hotel, to a site on the overall project site closest to our downtown to facilitate pedestrian circulation between the site and the downtown. We have a downtown that has some 30 restaurants. We want to make sure that people who come to this gaming facility will go to our downtown and patronize not just our shops, but all our restaurants as well. There are, in the last week or so, KG also added a waterfront convention center. New Bedford lacks for convention space. We believe that with a convention center there'll be folks who don't game, and who will travel to our downtown to, again, patronize our local businesses. That's another good thing. There will be, as there are in other HCA's, gaming rewards programs to facilitate, to incentivize folks to go to our downtown and spend money. In addition, there are certain prohibitions in, certain restrictions in the HCA that I think are somewhat unique to this HCA that I think will allow us to both enhance the appeal of our downtown, or not detract from our downtown, and most importantly, not to detract from the New Bedford product. And by that I mean this. We have for those of you who are familiar with New Bedford, especially the historic district, we pride ourselves on having preserved a big piece of what was once the original whaling village in New Bedford, preserved by a national park. The last thing that we would want to see are large, garish casino signs in close proximity to that. KG understood that. KG understood that an operator would love to have signage, because casinos have signage, that casinos want people to feel the glamour and the excitement of a casino, but they understood that in order to work in New Bedford, that such things signage had to be subdued. So we've included probably the strictest restraints on signage of any HCA, I suspect. No sign over 40 feet tall on the site. So it means that depicts a casino name, operator name, or logo. So we won't see the operator's name on the hotel or on the top of the power plant that will be restored. We, in addition to that, have included a prohibition on billboards advertising the casino in the city of New Bedford, because it is very important to me and very important to my community that we not be seen as a casino city. We're much more than that. So that was very important to me. We've restricted the number of hotel rooms and the height of the hotel itself. When KG first came to town, they proposed a 24-story, 2 hotel towers, one the larger of which would be 24 stories. That has been limited to 11 stories now, so it's much a better fit in terms of the scale of the build-out with the rest of the environs. That's really important. They've also limited the number of rooms to 300, so that which will underserve the site. That's an important thing for us, because we're trying to develop hotels in the downtown. We want spillover, and we think there will be spillover. Same thing with restaurants and retail, underserving the site with restrictions on both so that there is spillover. All important things to us. So what we've seen, and the list goes on, and I won't belabor it, but we are confident that our partnership with the KG team, Barry Gosson, Andy Stern, and the rest, will lead to a casino that enables New Bedford to enhance what it has, to grow very needed jobs in the city, and to create some more opportunities for us, to really double down, pardon the expression, on the things that we're already trying to advance. Let me just add one point about the proposed extension. We believe that we appreciate that the commission has been flexible in its schedules, and that is appropriate. What you're trying to get at, I submit, is the best results for the Commonwealth. And exalting form over substance on deadlines can undermine such efforts. We're ready to go in New Bedford. We're ready to do what it takes to support the financing of the project. And if there are folks who are thinking about investing in KG, I'm committed to their team that I'll make myself available. I think Barry will speak to the financing issue in a second. But we have a community that is firmly behind this idea. And in every community is some division about casinos and no casinos. There are people, as there are in New Bedford, as there are in other communities, on polar opposites. Categorically no, categorically yes, but the great middle in between are the ambivalent. And what we have now, because of the accommodations that they have made, their commitment to integrating this site with the city in all the appropriate and necessary ways, I think will reflect an overwhelming support in the city. I did not openly embrace the idea of casinos, as I said at the outset, because the devil is in the details with these things. And so that's why we've done our research, we've asked the hard questions, we've set a high bar, and in my view, that high bar has been crossed, and that's why we're here today, because if it weren't the case, we wouldn't be having this conversation candidly. So we believe that the competition that will result from New Bedford's entry into this race will be good for the Commonwealth, will be good for taxpayers, it will be good for the overall economy in the region, especially in southeastern Mass, which is arguably has been frankly left behind the growth of the Greater Boston ring, the 495 ring in Greater Boston, and we think that we like this opportunity. We don't see it as the goose that laid the golden egg. We very caution people in my city not to think about it that way, but I do think it is a prime opportunity for us to accelerate all of our efforts, and I hope that the Commission takes that into consideration.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. Oh, okay. I'm thrilled to be here.
Introduce your name and
My name is Barry Gossin. I'm the I'm the managing partner of KG Urban, and we've been in the state for the last 7 years. We are in the real estate business, and our primary, and I think it's important for you to understand the genesis of how we got here. Most of what we do is urban redevelopment. The interest in architecture and the interest in developments that have a positive economic impact on areas, we've demonstrated throughout our entire career. When we came to the state after we had completed a successful project in Bethlehem, where it had some of the similar elements, what we determined is that we were not going to be someone who would be spending their time looking at locations for greenfields just to build a casino off a highway at a greenfield somewhere and just benefit from what we thought would be eventually a casino legislation in the state. In fact, we had many opportunities for greenfields. We had many opportunities to join forces with people in the state, but we felt that our sweet spot and what we bring to the table is really an understanding of everything that the mayor just mentioned, understanding how thoughtful development can improve a city, that can attach to the grid, that create economic development without disrupting a city, building something within the texture and the context of the way a city should be architecturally designed. And that was critical and foremost in our thinking of why we chose New Bedford. When we did Bethlehem, we were fascinated with the Brookings report on America and the impact of Walmartization on this country and how small towns were impacted by malls and shopping centers that took the energy out of the inside of many cities. And we thought that here's such a unique opportunity to use gaming as a driver of economic development by taking the bones of what's a spectacularly interesting and beautiful city. And I love New England. My daughter lived in Brookline, and I've always been fascinated with how beautiful Boston is and how the architecture is here. So when we came upon this power plant, and many people didn't see, why would someone be interested in this big, ugly power plant on the waterfront, we saw something completely different. What we saw is a beautiful brick structure in a beautiful town that has been hit with economic disruption and a downturn. And where better than in New Bedford could you take drive economic development through gaming, and we could combine what we know best, which is how to develop thoughtfully and how to enhance a city. So for years, I mean, in 1982, 1983, we made an investment in what's now called Dumbo in New York City. it was a factory area, mostly empty, and there was really not much going on. And today, those areas around Brooklyn are the hottest areas in New York. We invested in Soho in 1982, 1983, brought the first retail tenant, Dean and DeLuca, into Soho. We bought the Flatiron building many years ago, and it had graffiti scrawled on the outside of the building. And our portfolio, which is about 10 million square feet strong, is inhabited with buildings that have architectural interest, are cast iron, are brick, are exactly what you have here. So we couldn't agree more with the mayor on how important it is to not compete against what the feeling and context of a city like New Bedford. We recognize that unemployment or underemployment of 22%. This is a great opportunity to create jobs and bring long-term jobs. We also recognize the opportunity that will leach into the rest of the city by attaching it to the grid to develop retail along the streets to attract other kinds of retails. When we went for the license in Bethlehem, we had letters of intent signed with people like Coach and Ralph Lauren and other people like that who were prepared to make an investment in that community. And I would say today it is a resounding success. It's in its second and third phase. We actually acquired much of the land on the street that adjoins the Bethlehem project, and we're now in the second phase of development, and other things are going on there. So I couldn't be more excited to have withstood what was a very long and arduous process, and knowing that the bar was set very high, but we set the bar high for ourselves. So we're excited that we now have a collaboration with the mayor, and together we are going to go develop this thing in a way that will benefit the city of New Bedford. We have made incredible progress. Many people were counting us out in respect of never getting an HCA. I will tell you that was the conventional wisdom, and for good reason. The mayor had his ideas about how development would occur in the town, and we together rethought the development and made some changes that were suited to his objectives, and we're excited that we accomplished that. We've signed a letter of intent with Foxwoods as an operator for our casino. You have a letter of a highly confident letter from our bank for financing, and I can say that in addition to what we've spent to date, the principals of KG will invest additional capital on their own part to provide a significant portion of that equity. But we are talking to many other people on the equity side, and we have an incredible amount of interest, an incredible amount of discussions around providing the equity. We are extremely confident that we'll be able to raise the equity to complete the task of getting this development in tow.
Questions, comments?
This all is fascinating. Why didn't it happen 3 weeks ago
Or 2 years ago?
or 2 years ago?
Well,
And I'm not being facetious. We've had this deadline out there for a considerable period of time. We've had other deadlines out there.
Mm-hmm.
There is the attention-getting impact of a deadline, which obviously finally seems to have worked. But why should we change the deadline? It's been out there for years. It shifted from time to time, but there has been a deadline that has come and gone for a considerable period of time.
Well, I think the objective of the gaming legislation is to create competition and to provide the best opportunity for what the original plan of the gaming legislation would provide for the state. So I think that by extending it for not a significant amount of time, that this gives the state the best opportunity to look at several projects that could provide them a full view of what would be in the best interest of the state.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You all know that it has taken us a while to negotiate an HCA. has taken a long time. We have had equity partners before. We did have an equity partner and an operator, and when Caesars left the state, one of our operators and our finance decided they got spooked. I mean, we were all set, we had everything together, and they were spooked. For whatever reason, there was a moment in time at that time where they were diverted to other things, and so that set us back some. And then the people that we had talked to were waiting to see us get an HCA. I mean, the financing people, financing arms, and everybody that we have talked to have been waiting for us to get a host agreement. So I'm part of it, but I think it just took a long time to get us to agree on a proper HCA that the mayor could live with, and I mean, the deadline has been moved before for different reasons each time. Obviously, you have to decide how you want to, it's your regulations, it's sort of your basketball. But in the best interest of the state, we think we have the best project. We are in the south part of this state, in a city that needs this kind of development, and I know we can get it done.
I just add one thing, if I can piggyback on his comments, is that on
Mr. Mayor, sure.
direct response to your question. I don't think on this end there has been no trifling with the commission's deadlines, and we're in a full sprint in an effort this past week and a half to try to get something done, to be here today to present to you, and that happened. Why didn't it happen 2 years ago? It's because I've taken a very different approach from others in the state when it comes to casinos. I really set a very, very high bar, and so I didn't make it easy on this group or other groups that came to New Bedford.
The extension that's being sought is for another 45 days, is that right?
That's correct, Commissioner.
And so what assurance do we have, and I respect what you said, I understand, but what assurance do we have that that 45 days isn't going to morph into 90 or 180 or?
I think it's Kevin Conroy, representing the firm Foley Hoeg. I think, Commissioner, someone who is very involved in the Region A process and somebody who had worked with the equity that was involved in the Region A process, something was surprising to me in the Region C process, and something was surprising to me about this project, which is when this project was out looking for equity, as we knew we had and we needed over the last 3 months, the equity was staying on the sidelines waiting for a host community agreement. And there had been so much discussion in the newspapers about the KG New Bedford sort of discussions that the equity was staying on the sidelines until we had an HCA. And that took me by surprise, commissioners. And also I think that the Region C was a little bit different with the referendum. And so to answer your question, Commissioner, I mean, and I think Barry can talk a little bit more about this, is that now that we have this HCA, I think we've given the potential equity that we've been talking to some assurances that this project is going to move forward. If they invest in this project, that we've gotten over a big hurdle. And so that was the thing was surprising, and I think that's why we have such confidence in the 45 days and our ability to get equity and the additional equity we need in the next 45 days, is that we have removed what was perceived out there to be a very big hurdle about this project.
Thank you.
But what if that equity is staying in the sidelines for other reasons, not just the HCA?
Look,
There are market considerations here, and there's other competitive considerations as well in this region. What assurances, I just want to press the original question from Commissioner McHugh. What assurances can we reasonably get that equity is just around the corner?
We've been fighting this battle for the Southern District for C for 7 years, and it's one battle after the next. I mean, we have invested time, effort, energy. We wouldn't be here. We would have taken our toys and gone home if we didn't think we could do this. We've got a lot of things that we could do. We also have to invest more money to get to the REF A2, so we're going to invest additional monies to get there. I wouldn't be here if we didn't think we could do it. We have never failed at and when we buy a building, we buy the building, we put up our money, and we don't have any contingency on financing. So we've raised money for many deals over a long period of time, and we have a pretty good track record of fulfilling our obligations, of financing our deals and raising equity. It is not very hard to raise equity in a market where when you buy real estate, they sell for 3 caps. So there's so much liquidity in the world today. Now for a while it was the Indians. Obviously Region C, people didn't take the time, equity didn't take the time to understand the Indians, so we had to educate on carcieri and all the other aspects of it. So that was one piece. Then for a time, there was basically the host agreement. People didn't want to engage with us seriously until they knew we had a host agreement, because when all the political insiders in Massachusetts, and in some respects, like every state, it's a small state, when we're engaging with an equity partner and they call their lobbyist in the state, and their lobbyist says, well, do you think these guys are going to get a host committee agreement? If that was the odds on that were probably pretty low till probably this morning. So the money people have lots of things they could do with their time, and they certainly didn't want to waste their time if they thought it wasn't viable.
But-
I mean,
And I'm sorry, but this goes perhaps to the point that Mr. Conroy was making, to his point about the surprise. That was not the case in the other regions. There was early equity, identification, equity source prior to host agreements
Commissioner,
on
in
the other
Boston,
regions.
in Boston, I'd write the check for Boston. I mean, it's a different economics.
And I guess that's what I'm
I mean,
getting
it's
at.
a very easy economics, and a resort like Wynn wouldn't do anything but Boston. So the large resorts were not interested in the southern region. So like the Las Vegas Sands or the Wynn. So it's generally a cluster of private equity and smaller gaming operations that would be more interested in it. And then until November, you also had the referendum. So you had the MASH piece, you had the host committee agreement. November, you had the referendum. You had the economics of it. So there were a limited group of people that were. You had New York. So you had New York going on. There were 100 people that bid for various licenses in New York, so they were all busy. So there were a host of things. I will tell you that there is a lot of equity out there, and you talk to anybody about the availability of equity in the world today, it's as liquid as you possibly could get.
Fair enough.
Mr. Gosselin, you said early on you had to educate about the Indians and the Mashpee. Why has that changed now?
Well, I mean, some of it is, following other people. So people are lazy about how they. So if someone else is, if you have Foxwoods willing to do it, if you have Mass Gaming willing to do it, if you have other people willing to do it, then obviously they're smart. So there is a certain element of that. And then we've spent a lot of time. So it's not as an issue. It's just not an issue for. It's not an issue for most of the people now in the know, who look at it and have studied it and have realized, the land and trust issue, that it's unlikely, if ever, that land will be.
I think too, Commissioner, I think it's this commission. Frankly, this commission has been bullish about Region C over the last months. I think the market has understood that. You've been talking about Regency, you've been talking about the importance of this region, and I think the market is responding to that. And I think the people that we've been talking to have been responding to the things you've been saying. And so I think that's been part of the reason we think that the overcoming this Mashpee, this Indian hangover on this region, I think because of the activity that you have generated, because we are getting host community agreements, because that activity has begun, that is feeding, and that's bringing more people to the market to look at it.
Well, let me pick up on that, though, because, and this shifts away from should we move the deadline, and if you're not prepared to answer it, I understand that. But we have always said that when it came time to make a decision as to a Regency license, we would consider the economic conditions as they then exist. And we would consider the economic conditions insofar as the Mashpees Mashpee situation had clarified itself or was unclear. But we would look at the economic conditions overall. And we'd look at our assessment of the economic viability of a Regency casino, given the possibility, A, of 4 casinos if the Mashpee application goes through, and the economic viability of a 3rd casino if it does not. And for me, that remains a consideration that we need to think about. How can you think of a way that we can begin to, if we move this deadline, rapidly get our hands on that component without possibly putting everybody through the full RFA2 process? Now, if you're not prepared to answer that,
This doesn't pertain to just your application. This
No.
is a question
there's
that
a question for.
affects everybody equally.
Right. And I realize that question perhaps comes out of left field. And if you're not prepared to answer it, I understand that, and that's fine. But that's something that, frankly, particularly over the last 3 or 4 months, I've been struggling with internally.
I'll give you one anecdote, Commissioner, and then maybe I'm say we're not prepared to answer that. I think, Commissioner, look, Barry Gossin is here before you, who has raised equity for a lot of projects, and he's telling you he thinks he can get the equity, and we can do that soon. And I know that's not what you're looking for, but I think what you're seeing right now in Region C is you're seeing, it may not be matching what you saw in Region A, but you're seeing enthusiasm for projects. You're seeing some good projects come forward, and I think that to you is your signal that and we obviously know the minimum investments you're looking for. We're following your regs closely. We're going to have a wonderful project that the mayor is very proud of in New Bedford, and I think that to you is the signal. I know you're looking for something a little more quantitative and qualitative, but that's the signal I wonder you were looking for.
No, that is part of what I'm looking for, but I take Mr. Gostin has talked about some other projects that he's done. I didn't realize the Dean and DeLuca, that you had the Dean and DeLuca piece, or the Flatiron building, and so, but I didn't understand the Bethlehem. So I understand the competence there. What I am more concerned about is the economics thrown off for the state and for the region by a casino in New Bedford, or a casino in Somerset, or a casino in Brockton. It's not unique to you. And with the economic conditions as they currently exist, B, with now everybody knows who the other competitors' casinos are and where they are, and the Mashpees are still out there. How do we get a handle on that, and can we get a handle on that without going through the entire RFA2 process? I may be being terribly unfair at this point, because you didn't come prepared to answer that question, and I honor that. And if you say you can't answer it, that's fine.
Commissioner, perhaps I could make one comment in regard to
Right.
that. Jonathan Silverstein for the City of New Bedford. I think Commissioner Cameron asked the question, what's changed? You know, why isn't the tribal issue just as pertinent as it was earlier on when Mr. Gossin was trying to raise equity and had to make those explanations? As you'll recall, the original gaming legislation gave an exclusivity to a tribal casino in Region C for a period up until, I believe, July of 12. Then the commission extended that. Nothing happened with the tribal casino. Nothing's happened since then. Nothing looks terribly imminent to happen. And so I think as more and more time passes, you're never going to have a definitive no on the tribal question, and I don't think it's fair to hold these applicants to a definitive no, because it can't happen. There's always the chance someday. You could only have a definitive yes, but I think as definitive as you can get at this point in time, years after the legislation passed, there's absolutely no indication that the tribal casino is likely to happen. And so I think what you're hearing from someone with a great deal of experience raising equity for projects just like this is that that's no longer an issue. The market is different. The scale of the proposals that you'll see is very different, but they're still very, very substantial with great financial benefits to the Commonwealth, to the host communities and the regions in which they'd be located. And I'd say first and foremost among that is the KG project in New Bedford, which is furthest from Boston, furthest from Plainville, furthest from Springfield, a great deal closer to Rhode Island, and so has the greatest chance of accomplishing all of the goals that the gaming legislation was enacted to accomplish. So I know you said, and I'd agree, that doesn't directly go to the question of the extension, but in a way I think it does, because if you want the best chance of accomplishing those goals, then I think it's fair to grant an extension, and a lot has changed since the last time you set the current deadline.
Yeah, I wanted to make it clear that the extension, I thought of the extension as a separate issue, and okay, thank you.
I would like to follow up. I had an opportunity to know Mayor Mitchell a little bit socially, but I would like to put a finer point on his question, on Commissioner McHugh's question. Reading the newspapers, which I know as well as anyone is not necessarily the whole story, but reading the newspapers, it seemed to me like it was pretty straightforward that you didn't have the slightest interest in negotiating a good faith arrangement with these guys. And it looked like you were just going to stall and stall and stall and stall, and eventually it would fade. I wondered whether you'd even come today, because I thought maybe you had managed to do what you were intending to do, which was stall through the end of the deadline. Apparently, again, just reading the newspapers, something happened within that last week where you put some kind of a redesign or reorientation or something on the table, which I assume had something to do with breaking this logjam and making this happen. But you could have done that a year ago, or 6 months ago, or 2 months ago. Why should we prejudice another party that adhered to the rules to satisfy, in effect, your whim?
So let me see if I can unpack that, Mr. Chairman. So I can't speak for how my comments in the last couple of years have been characterized in the newspaper, but I did take pains over the last couple of years to spell out in editorials that were published in the New Bedford Standard Times my thoughts about casinos and how they might fit in New Bedford. I'd be happy to share that those pieces with the commission. And my position hasn't changed over time. It is all about the details. It is all about fitness, and that it was very clear that not just that it wasn't the case that any casino would do in New Bedford, because our economic development plans are all about building on our assets. We're not, and frankly, no community that would come before you is contemplating building a casino-based economy. The question really is, how does it support the other things or detract from them? So, so that question has been pending for a while. We've had fits and starts. We had extensive talks with Foxwoods and another investor group about a site on our municipal golf course that didn't come together. That was another possibility. But I made very clear all along, and took pains to make very clear all along, that my door was always open, that I would consider any proposal that would, again, on balance, advance New Bedford's interests, but that the burden was on the developer to show that. So on the question, and that's how it came together in the last few weeks. I think in part, one of the considerations for me that became more apparent is that the likelihood of something on the golf course was not going to happen, so we were really just looking at one site. So that certainly played a part in it. And frankly, the team at KG stepped up in a way that accommodated New Bedford's interests. So I think that certainly played a part in it as well. With respect to prejudice, you know, a 45-day extension for a license that will last some 15 years and for a development that will presumably have a life much longer is probably not going to cause any undue prejudice to the city of Brockton. I say that with all respect to the city of Brockton.
Well, having competition would be prejudicial to their competitive status.
Yeah, I get it, and as I said to Commissioner McHugh, we don't trifle with these deadlines. We take them seriously. We certainly have taken this meeting very seriously and have tried to fit in what is as you will see, a very comprehensive host community agreement, and hash through that in a very short period of time through a lot of intense negotiations. So, you know, it is emphatically not the case that I've, you know, seen Jesus and now I know that casinos are the way to go. It is not. It has always been, how is this going to advance New Bedford's interest? And that's the approach I've taken all along.
Mr. Mayor, did you understand, though, that the applicant had a substantial piece missing, which is this equity portion that we keep talking about?
Yep.
That was perhaps dependent on the HCA status that you effectively controlled?
Well, I understand that may be, as your questions a moment ago suggested, that may be one of the reasons. You asked about the market as well, and there could be a combination of factors. But I suspect that having an HCA now does matter, and it creates more certainty for prospective investors that I think will enable the financing to come together.
Are you enthusiastic about this project?
Well, you know, I'm not the kind of person who jumps on the table and plays air guitar, but that's just not my style. But I am enthusiastic about the opportunity for the city, because it will certainly contribute substantially to the public fisc. There is money that will go into economic development that will allow us to accelerate our economic development efforts. One of the problems that we have, unlike larger cities, is that lack of capacity in our economic development agencies to do real economic development. We have a strapped redevelopment authority. Our port authority, which is the only one in the state other than Massport, is rubbing nickels together despite the size and intensity of the activity in the port. Our Economic Development Council is extremely productive, but it's only 5 or 6 people, and we use largely community development block grant funds to fund them. So, you know, and what I'm sketching out, and I suspect things aren't different in Brockton in this way, it's the life of a mid-sized American city these days, and that is that there are capacity constraints that impede economic growth. And what we've done, we've taken great pains to do over the last couple of years, is to pull the business community together to come up with definitive plans to build to grow the regional economy. We believe they are working, will work in the long run, and we see a casino as, and I don't mean to diminish it in this way, but it is a complement to those, it is complementary to those efforts. Complement, but still very important, because it will give us the capacity to really push things a lot harder.
Could I add something? So, I mean,
About whether he's enthusiastic?
I'm not exuding enough.
This is his enthusiasm. This is him at his enthusiastic best. Look, part of having a successful, sustainable casino is around is around having alternatives, having a convention center, having a hotel, being near, our view is being next to the city, connecting to the grid, having much more of a reason for people to go there. And, you know, Bethlehem is really an example of development across the street is starting. We own property there. We're developing residential. We're developing retail. We have a brewery, handcrafted brewery going in. There's a very large retailer that's coming to the rest of the site. And it feeds on itself. They get, last year, I think 8 million people come to Bethlehem. 8 million people come to that casino because it has an outlet center, because it has a hotel, it has an event center, it has entertainment. And so people come there for more than just gaming. And when there's more than just gaming, and we look at, you know, the campus as New Bedford, the campus of the site, it'll all feed off each other, and that's how you create a good urban development. And the ingredients that make Boston what it is, or Charles Street, or those kinds of things that make a place a destination, are the kinds of things that gaming is a jump start. It's a jump start for New Bedford. It's not. For 2 years, I may not have gotten that message across as clear as I would have liked to the mayor, but we've been offered to be partners on some of these greenfields. People wanted us to join in their application. We were not interested. We're interested in this site not because it's only gaming, but because of what it does for New Bedford, and it fits who we are as a company. It is a much more rewarding, much more interesting, much more redevelopment. It's just a better project. It's better for the state. It's better for New Bedford. It's more interesting for us. So in respect of you know, Mr. McHugh's comment, we think that you beat out the competition by having more to offer than just a box with slots, which is what, to be honest with you, what many Vegas shops would like to have. They'll be happy to have a box on a green field, easy to get to. People come in and pull the slot machines. You don't need people to operate the slots. It's the highest profit margin. That's not what we're about. We think, for starters, speed to market, thoughtful, better project, more interesting architectural, in a city, on a waterfront, that regardless of what happens, yes, it will be stressed somewhat, and anyone is going to look at that. But we've talked about that. You could look at a stressed analysis. What happens if? How would it impact the revenue? We have that. You have to worry about the Meadowlands at Bethlehem. There's always something that could impact. The truth of the matter is, it really doesn't matter to the state, because the state's going to get its revenue first. The project will be built and be beautiful, and you will have a waterfront developed. The city will have already advanced significantly with other retail, and the project will be built. I mean, we're confident that the project can support itself, will be a good return on investment. We can raise the equity. There's a significant amount of equity. The same people that are looking for 3%, 3.5% cap rates will be looking for something which is a much higher return on investment, and being partners in something interesting like this in New Bedford.
Mr. Chairman, if he had told me that he was going to build a brewery in New Bedford, I wouldn't be able to contain my enthusiasm today.
Handcrafted.
Handcrafted.
I have a quick question, and I have to admit, I like the new term of the use, connect to the grid, because for a minute there, I didn't think you had any power out to the site. But your letter dated last week asked for 45 days. Talked about the fact there was no HCA, talked about the need, obviously, to secure more equity. Is that 45-day request now, is it still valid? You've got the HCA today. Does that change your timeline? I mean, the equity piece is tough to chase. And from our investigations and enforcement side, as I've seen or I've witnessed, I think the equity players, the financial instruments, and the other projects have sometimes drawn out the review and investigation process just because of the sheer number of people involved. It's not as simple as quickly go take a look at an operator. It's a different piece to it. Having the HCA in place, or at least signed between you and the enthusiastic mayor, does that change the requested timeline that you need?
I think obviously 45 days to raise the money would be better for us. I mean, these aren't people that, it's not like we're just going to go get the phone book and make calls. I mean, we have talked to people about equity who are there and just waiting for us to come back. But I think 45 days is the right amount of time to get this done.
Any other questions, thoughts? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we have the folks from Somerset.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. We have Attorney Robert Allen, we have Kevin Considine, and we also have Donald Setters, who's the Chair of the Board of Selectmen of Somerset.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Before Mr. Allen starts, I believe I've disclosed this before, but I am a friend of Mr. Allen's from my old home with Brookline, and many years ago, when he ran for selectman, gave him a modest contribution, I believe, but it does not affect my ability to deal with this issue, I don't think.
You could say successfully ran for select.
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Director Wells. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, my name is Robert Allen. I'm here representing Crossroads. Appreciate the opportunity here. With me again is my partner, Jennifer Gilbert, and Donald Setters, who is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. In Somerset, I also have Daniel Avery behind me, who is the corporate counsel for Somerset Development Group. As you are aware, we've been here before in Region A, and we were back before you approximately 6 weeks ago, asking for the continuance to March 26th. I am happy to say that a lot went on between the last time I appeared before you and that March 26th date, including merging two groups together, which proved to be a task full of paperwork and a lot of negotiations and took up quite a bit of time. Fortunately, while we were working on that merger, we're also continuing communications with Somerset so as to keep them in the loop and to run parallel tracks, knowing that this board talked about this March 26th date or March 16th, I'm sorry, March 16th date, and made it clear that was a deadline. For the board's information, just so you're aware, the three new qualifiers who have all submitted the necessary Phase 1 suitability and applications are James Karam, who's a well-known developer and civic leader in Massachusetts South Coast region, Dan Schreiber, who's a real estate investor living in California, David Kleinhandler, who's a private investor entrepreneur from New York, and we're very excited that Dave Hanlon will serve as the operator. Dave has been over 30 years. He's been a leader in gaming. He's been qualified in, I think, every major community that's had gaming, both domestically and internationally. And Dave's very excited about this project. He is putting together a team to join him in the operation in Somerset. As this board knows, and as we just heard, Region C has been one of the more challenging regions in Massachusetts. Yet in a relatively short period of time, we've managed to accomplish quite a bit, including just last night receiving a highly confident letter from Jefferies, a leading investment banking firm, to provide debt financing for a project that will exceed $500 million. I provided Director Wells with a copy of that highly confident letter. This will certainly help as we continue our conversations with equity participants. Much like the prior applicant, we are not opening the phone book today. We've had significant conversations. We were actually hoping we would have something by the March 16th, but we just didn't make it. We just ran out of time. We really believe that this site in Somerset is really one of the best sites in Region C and probably extremely unique because this is a 100-acre parcel that's actually owned by the town. This should not be overlooked by the board because the town and its residents have an interest and stake in this development that other communities just don't have. It'll make for a strong partnership going forward, increase the benefits and sense of pride and ownership for the community. This truly will be a public-private partnership that will bring enormous benefit to the people of Somerset. I'm pleased to report that the chairman, as well as all three members of the Board of Selectmen, are here to support this request for an extension. Chairman Setters will address the commission if the commission allows. As a former selectman myself, I note the importance of having selectmen here in person to support this. As I said, Region C has some complexities and other regions do not, and although the Crossroads Group has been together for quite a while, this new team has really been put together in the last 6 weeks and had made incredible strides towards finalizing all the pieces necessary to move forward. A short extension to identify all the equity contributors is requested. An extension provides needed competition for the license in this region and would also permit a town, and I think this board understands that the legislation really does not treat towns and cities equally. Towns have extra hurdles to go through with the Chapter 30 laws and et cetera, town meeting approval, other things that a city will not go through. So we have a couple extra hurdles to run, and this extension will allow us to address that as well. We believe that the people of Somerset deserve the opportunity for us to come in there and help them in a situation that they find themselves in. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to turn it over to the chairman now, Chairman Setters.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Chairman Crosby and the rest of the board, I can't thank you enough for allowing me this opportunity to present Somerset's case for extending this application for the Phase 1 portion of this proposal. Today, I bring with me, as a sign of solidarity, my other two fellow select board members, Mr. Scott LeBeau, Mr. David Berreby, as well as our chairman of our Economic Development Committee, Mr. Jim Burke. I can't help but think that some of the delays in getting this application forward, the town may bear some of the responsibility for that. Somerset's a very unique community. Some people think of us as a suburb of the great city of Fall River. And a little better than maybe a year ago, Fall River had a quest to entertain a casino proposal. And after speaking with the then mayor, as well as some of their economic development people, they had heard that we were thinking about such a proposal for Somerset with this beautiful piece of land that I think was kind of under the radar. Nobody was looking at it. But understanding the regional benefits of a casino and what it could do, we were asked to stand down as Forever proceeded to see if it was something they could have. And we did. When it was clear that they just could not find a suitable location, as hard as they tried to, we embarked on our quest to put this parcel of land that we have in the hands of someone who could market it to potential developers. Now, one thing you have to understand, Somerset is a very unique town, one of the most densely populated towns in the Commonwealth. We're also, the other unique thing is this piece of property, because it's town-owned. Somerset forever has relied on 2 power plants for virtually all of our operating revenue. And both of those plants are shutting down. One has already closed. One is scheduled to close in 2017. We've lost, in a very short period of time, over $8 million in operating revenue. And there is no other developable land in our town to make up for this muchly needed revenue. Hence, the idea of a casino. The other aspect that intrigued us is that a casino fills a void for our area. We don't have nice hotel accommodations. We don't have things where you can have a conference. We don't have things where people close by, that people can enjoy entertainment without going to our neighboring state, which is Rhode Island, and then beyond that, Connecticut. So again, we embarked on this kind of late in the game, and I know that the operators, the developers, putting their team together have worked very, very hard to put their proposal together for you. So for economic reasons, and everybody has economic reasons for wanting commercial and industrial development in their towns. Well, ours is a huge number, and it's happened very suddenly to our town. The second factor, as Attorney Allen mentioned, has been the uniqueness of this piece of property. It's literally 1,000 feet off of a major interstate, Route 195. You go through an all-commercial district to get to the corner of this property. And it abuts a lot of commercial. There is some residential, but I think every location is going to have some residential impact. But the nice thing is, it's town-owned property. And we haven't got into the nitty-gritties of a host agreement, but we have talked about many of its elements, particularly the ones that are concerned with the sale or lease of the town-owned property. And right now, we're talking about a possible plan where the sale would actually take place maybe 5 years or so after a casino was up and running. And one can only imagine how the value of that property would be magnified after the development is complete and after the income is coming into that new business. It could make that property worth easily 10 times or more what its fair market value is today. And Somerset would reap the benefits of that. And I think we would feel like we were partnering in this case with the developer as a result of this. And I think that's kind of unique. So for that reason and the financial reasons, because all of our elected officials, as far as the selectmen, our economic development, we believe in all the good things that a casino could bring to a community. We have the full support of our neighbor to our direct east, which is the city of Fall River. We need the jobs desperately. Fall River needs those jobs desperately. We also have that deep water access. This is probably 500 or 600 feet, maybe just a little more, away from the Taunton River, where we're hoping there will be some economic development spurred on by a development like this that's going to spill over and connect Fall River to us directly. They've got a renaissance going on with their waterfront property. I mean, it's literally by a high-speed ferry, probably no more than 45 minutes to Newport, Rhode Island. And again, the interstate that runs through there, Interstate 195, we're almost at the crossroads of Route 24 for people who want to enjoy these facilities coming from the north. And then we're so close by the Rhode Island facilities, we're hoping to really pull some great business that we're losing currently. The state of Massachusetts is losing from those developments in Rhode Island and Connecticut. So again, I respectfully ask you to strongly consider this request by Crossroads to extend this. And I thank you very much for hearing me tonight, this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just lastly, I'll say we Crossroads. We spent time in the town in Milford, and while we had support of a couple of the selectmen, obviously we took a pretty bad blow in the referendum there, and for the most part we were out of the casino business. We were approached once the referendum in November came up. We weren't really thinking about Region C. We were approached shortly after, and this really geared up for us after the new year. The problem from our standpoint was really the development wing of Crossroads was Foxwoods, and they were going through a change of leadership. Our relationship was with their prior leader, and they went off after the Milford vote. And David Nunes was also our chief development officer. So the people left in Crossroads were really, it was Robert Potamkin and Bruce Etkin who were really the equity portion of this. So we merged with this group that brings both real estate equity and some local flavor of development, as well as Dave Hanlon, which brings in the casino aspect of it. So the benefit of going last is you heard the questions before, and we haven't been sort of sitting around waiting. This was kind of, we were approached by a community, and we don't look at this as prejudice against Brockton in any way. I mean, sure, it prevents their layup, right? Everybody would prefer to have a layup if they can drive the hoop, but this really gives the commission another opportunity to look at. You can factor in whatever you want to factor in. You can weigh whatever you think is important when you're making your final decision. We're just asking for the opportunity. And listen, we put aggressive timing in there because we think we're pretty close on equity. We think that Jeffrey's letter is going to help us a lot. We have the framework of an HCA all set out. We have a community that wants us. We have a great site. We think we can make a great pitch to this commission that town-owned land partnering with this private group is really something that this board hoped for. It'll be great for southeastern Massachusetts, it'll be great for the Commonwealth, and we're just looking for extra time to just put that final piece together.
Thank you for those comments. I do I want to pick up on the equity piece, which you mentioned the Jeffries letter, but that's a commitment of debt financing,
That's correct.
as you correctly pointed out. But you still have to seek and obtain the equity portion, or your group has. That's a high bar in my view. One that the prior applicant here attributed to the lack of their HCA, but they had made inroads, I guess, and had conversations about that. Where would your group be relative to that equity discussion?
Well, as I said, I thought our goal was to actually have it by that March 16th date. We're in pretty deep communications. We came here last time in Region A. We had an equity partner. We hope to continue communications, but we have pretty good guidelines on where we're going to come out with the HCA. We have a pretty good sense. We've been able to provide that to these equity partners. Perspective, correct. And one of the things that people had to get comfortable with, as you've heard before and as you well know, is the Mashpee. Is Connecticut going to be expanding? Are they going to be closer? And looking at all those factors, when the consultants get brought in to look at it, they needed to decide whether it was worth it. We believe that we've provided good numbers, and my team this is what they do, and they're very confident that the equity piece will be fairly eminent. We tried to be as concise as we could in the request for additional time, respecting that the commission has a difficult decision, and anytime anytime this request is made.
Mr. Allen, you talked about constraints with town government, as a reason for not having a host community agreement? Is that what you were alluding to?
Well, both in a timing aspect, you have to come to grasp with whether it's going to be a sale or whether it's going to be a lease, and going through an RFP process versus if it's a sale, it has to go through a town meeting process. And yes, those are when the chairman spoke about the nitty-gritty of the HCA, those are the nitty-gritty things that we have to finalize. Those aren't the nitty-gritty things that the equity prospective people will look at, but that's the nitty-gritty stuff that we have to work out with the town.
So, just so I'm clear, you have a town process for the ultimate, if you were to go forward, the ultimate disposition of the property. Is town meeting required for the approval of your HCA? And what kind of timing requirements would that entail?
If I may, I'm going to turn to Jennifer, who knows the town process.
Sure, thank you very much. Jennifer DePazzo Gilbert. So having been town council for many, many years in a community, and I am now special town council on a variety of projects, I know the town process. It is long, it is cumbersome, and it's a two-part process for a resort casino. First of all, you need the zoning change, but to dispose of land, you have to go through a Chapter 30B process, which requires an appraisal, it requires an invitation for bidders, and it requires notification at the state level that a bid has gone out. And you've also got to decide, will this be a sale? Will this be a long-term ground lease? And of course, for financing purposes, the lease would have to be 95, 99 years in order for financing to play a part. And what we're working out with the town is a unique opportunity to make the town a partner in this deal. So as Chairman Sutters mentioned, this could be an opportunity where after it's initially a ground lease, and there's some payment for that, and then as the value of the land increases, there could be an option then to sell at a much higher price. So these are the details we have to work out, all within this timing of this phase 2 and the votes that are required. So once the RFP or the invitation for bids is approved by the selectmen, any disposition of that land also has to go to town meeting for a 2/3 vote.
Why not structure it as a simple lease and be partners for the term of the license, or
It's definitely
for as long as they're licensed?
It's a possibility, and those are the kind of details that we're working out, and certainly Chairman Setters and the other board members have to flush that out with their constituents. This is an open town meeting form of government.
Yep.
It's not representative, so everybody that shows up gets to vote.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
They're usually long, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
right. This one especially.
Good old America. So, other questions, thoughts?
Mr. Allen, you said that Mr. Hanlon was going to be the operator. Help me understand that.
Yeah. Well, we spent some time on that today. I said, Commissioner McHugh may ask this question about an operator. I don't know what made me think you would ask that question, but
Either.
yeah. Mr. Hanlon feels that he has the resources available to him and the people surrounding to him that he can set up an operation necessary to put this casino together. I know it's not sort of the traditional, you expect to see Hard Rock, you expect to see some other entity in here, but this has always been, if you remember last time in, Mr. Hanlon always proposed himself to be an operator when he came before with his own application. He was always proposing to come forward as an operator. This is something that he's given a lot of thought about, and something with his 30 years in experience feels that he can put together the right team to create this operation that's the right fit for a small community like Somerset. I think that's why he focused and was fixated on Somerset. I spent a lot of time looking at the regs on what is an operator and is it defined anywhere. It's not necessarily defined in the regs, just to kind of be clearer on that answer. So I spent time with Mr. Hanlon today, and who couldn't be here, who wanted to be here, but that was his response.
Well, I hear that. The reason I ask it is because it is unusual, and but more functionally, there has to be the assembly of a team. Obviously,
Correct.
he's not going to be there in the morning to turn on the lights and then turn the lights off night and have everybody go home. And the team to run an organization like this is a complex team with complex responsibilities, and all of whom likely have to be investigated by the IEB before the Phase 1 process is finished. And so the 25-day extension that you request, is that an extension in which Mr. Hanlon will put together his entire team, or is that to get equity money, or what's going to happen during the 25 days?
It's a combination of both. We would address the operation issue as Director Wells and I discussed in her office on Monday, as well as the equity piece. But
Is it realistic that the operating team for this can be put together in 25 days? Starting with Mr. Hanlon? I mean...
Well, Mr.
starting
Hanlon's already
starting
submitted his
No,
application.
no, but
yeah.
I mean, I should have been more clear. Starting with one person and building out from one person to a team that's actually capable of operating a facility like this.
Yeah, I can only tell you that Mr. Hanlon was confident with that timing. And listen, the bottom line is, ultimately, if you're not satisfied with the operation he puts together, then obviously that's going to be a huge factor in the board's decision. If you don't feel the operation is appropriate for this community, it's going to weigh against them, obviously.
Well, weigh against them or weigh in favor of one by one over the next who knows how long, people being added with another request to extend the deadline or change or do something, and very much bogging down our ability to get things done. Okay, I hear you.
Anything else? Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So, the issue on the table is to whether to extend for 45 days for KG and/or 21 days for Crossroads / Somerset.
Mr. Chair, I actually think we have two issues. We started to talk, Commissioner McHugh alluded to thinking about the region as a whole, as well as these two particular requests, and I do think we should handle them separately. But I do think that there are two issues that we should at least talk about today. And,
Explain what do you...
well, the region as a whole, meaning the question was asked of one applicant, and maybe that it's a question for us to talk about, not just, the issue with the tribe, the issue with a market analysis, all of the changes that have occurred in gaming, which will affect our decision on what to do with Region C. When we started this in April of 2013, we had a lot of folks come before us and say, hey, don't let the region fall behind. And that was when we decided, okay, the tribe has a path to move forward and continue on. At the same time, we would explore a commercial license. And now we're here almost 2 years later, and we're deciding whether or not to give more extensions, which to me is a huge signal that there's great risk in Region C. And I just think that's something we need to talk about. And, the things, in thinking about Commissioner McHugh's question, things that I had thought about as well, I think it's time for us to do a new market analysis, update the one we had done on Region C. So much has changed, meaning Rhode Island, the status has changed, table games, combined ownership. Connecticut is talking about expansion. New Hampshire is through a house. Plainville, we did not have the decision in Plainville that slots parlor would go in that location when we decided to open this up. The compact was not renegotiated with a zero for another casino in that region at the time that we opened this up. So lots has changed, and I think it's time A, for a new market analysis, and B, for an updated status on all tribal decisions, all legislation that have occurred in the last 2 years. I know that there's even been a recommendation to make an appointment to go into the Bureau of Indian Affairs and ask, you know, what is the status? So I think there's a lot we can do as a commission to update ourselves on changes in the environment that will help us make an informed decision with regard to Region C. So I think that's the
Okay.
region as a whole.
I get that. I think that's important, and that certainly all of that goes to what Commissioner McHugh reiterated, which we've said all the time. We will, when it comes down to decision time, and as we prepare for a decision, we will be assessing
Yeah,
everything out there. We don't have anything on the agenda for this topic for a broader discussion at the moment, and I'm not sure that now is the time to begin to sort of have a freewheeling conversation on that issue. But I'm perfectly
Right.
perfectly fine with having it on the agenda and having a conversation about it and thinking about what other data, if any, do we need. But I don't think this is the time really for us, particularly given that it's pushing 5 o'clock.
Yeah, okay, well, I just think it is all
Yeah.
connected, and I think if you want to put it on the agenda for next time, that can be part of where we go moving forward here. I think everyone would like to know what our feelings are on the region, and that's part of the indecision, whether it comes to money or putting a deal together. So I think that's important to do. With regard to the requests for extensions, I'm frankly not, I'm not persuaded to do that. We had one applicant, with the last time we did not extend the deadline, we gave folks time to cure their deficiencies, which in my mind, but there was always a distinction. We were not extending the deadline. We have done that 2 or 3 times, depending on semantics. And people knew they had the time to cure those deficiencies. They were issued letters. I think our deadlines matter. And I was not persuaded. I understand how KG Urban did everything they could, but I was not persuaded by the mayor, really not paying attention to those deadlines and not paying attention to the time to cure the deficiencies. I understand fully what his points are, but I'm not persuaded that we should extend at this time. And certainly Somerset, in my mind, is not even close to having a deal there. That was not persuasive to me at all to move forward with another extension at this time.
Yeah, to me, there's a significant piece that's missing from these two, the two applicants that are requesting, in my view, which I do view connected to the market and the risk in that region. I have this feeling that the reason it's taking them this long and continues to take them long, and notwithstanding the recent momentum and the dramatic, new HCA, for example, there's a major component in them with the equity, and I cannot help but wonder whether the equity will remain in the sidelines, or it's very close to getting up from the sidelines, because there's this added element of risk and this unique piece on this region. I've made the case before you, my colleagues, that this minimum capital investment may be a big hurdle in and of itself, and we fine-tuned that a little bit by including some of the costs that we had previously excluded, but not all of them, and that's still a very high bar. And I wonder if the market is reacting to that, not just the capital investment, but everything else, the prospect of the tribe, whatever additional developments we've had. We've awarded 3 licenses, right? And that bears into the development of those the certainty, I guess, of those projects or the coming to fruition of those projects could be having a chilling effect on this other region. So I do see your point, Commissioner, about perhaps having to study, do a refresher. It's not a de novo market assessment because the framework would work. There could be a refresher that we could do with, pinpointing the location. I still think that it's the most challenging region because it's less populated and has a less market potential.
So how does that bear on to extend or not?
Well, I'm reluctant to extend it. I think the market is answering the way it has answered. We just need a little bit more time. We're almost there, but we don't have the full piece. And I see the big important piece missing is that equity. The equity I see it's important because they are ultimately the last ones to get paid, and therefore the ones who really think about the risk of the economics of this market. The deal makers will continue to try to make the deal, and that's what they get compensated to do, and it's great that they're making great progress, but the equity, the group that gets paid at the end, is the one that ultimately is looking at all these risk factors, and I wonder if they're just a little too high.
I come at this from a little bit different starting point. This is really a tough problem. I think we all feel that it's a tough problem, but I come at it from a little bit different starting point, and the starting point is the statute and the purpose of the statute. And the statute is designed to create an economic engine, or engines. It's designed to create jobs. It's designed to create both permanent and construction jobs, and it's designed to help reach into, at least as we've applied it, into communities that are having difficult economic times and boost the economics. The deadline is not an end in of itself. I come from an environment where deadlines are important, but they're not inflexible. And a deadline is an aid to a result. And it's one thing for a deadline to pass by a year and have somebody come in and want to start all over when we're a year down the road and in the middle of something else, and somebody pops in and said, by the way, I've finally got my equity put together. But nobody's left the starting gate yet. And I recognize, and so the deadline has produced a concrete result after a long period of dithering. That is notwithstanding the fact that equity money is still out there, is realistic and tangible, and has now a united political backing in New Bedford. I'm going to talk in a minute about Somerset, and I also think that I recognize the position, the equities of the position taken by the other applicant. And I recognize the thoughtful, as I always have, contributions and thoughts and expressions by Mayor Units, who's done marvels for that city over the years. But this statute expressly says that nobody has a privilege, that the license is a privilege. Nobody's got a lock on it. And I think the effect of saying that we're not going to move the deadline under these circumstances because we said it, and because of the equities that Mayor Units advanced, would be in effect to say that we are deciding an important economic issue, an important jobs issue, an important inner city development issue, simply on the basis of a deadline that in the long run is not going to hinder our passage down the road by a significant amount. As I say, it would be a different story if we were 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road. We've waited for 2 years, and I still think all of the things that my colleague Commissioner Cameron said are things that I'm very interested in. I'm not convinced about what the economics will show. A lot has changed, and I think we need to look at that very carefully. But I think we need to look at it carefully on the merits and not use a deadline as a proxy for avoiding looking at it. In fact, we can't avoid looking at it because we have an applicant who's qualified and whose application is going to go forward. So we're going to look at it anyway. We're at the starting gate. I am of the opinion, I'd still like to hear what my other colleagues have to say, but I'm of the opinion that we ought to grant for the New Bedford package an extension of the deadline that they're seeking. I put the Somerset application in a different category, but maybe we ought to give them the same right. I just don't see how in 21 days this can be fixed. I recognize Mr. Allen's remarks. I recognize the energy that's being brought to bear by the elected representatives. I know how difficult this is, but I just think that they're so far away that it can't possibly be put together, and that raises the specter of dribs and drabs coming in over the next year as various pieces of this are assembled to try to make a viable operating entity. And I think that would be, the likelihood that that's going to happen is unrealistically raising expectations that are ultimately going to be dashed. But, so I'll stop. That's where I'm coming from.
Commissioner Stebbins?
I mean, the first piece of this that occurs to me is I worry about the capacity of our team, and especially the IEB team, to conduct thorough and suitable investigations into what primarily are financial partners, as we talked about with one project, you know, who are all the operator, key gaming employees going to be. I worry about us doing a disservice to the communities at large in terms of being adequately able to go through and investigate, interview, conduct suitability hearings on the people that are still obviously missing pieces to some of this equation on some of these projects. And I feel we owe that to the voters when they get ready to go to the polls to vote on an HCA. I'm not sure I see a way through without, if we extend a deadline, that it's not moving our other dates to, just to be fair, the date of the RFA2 deadline.
I'd certainly agree with that. I mean, yeah.
I take to heart Commissioner Cameron's thoughts. This is a different environment. We've always talked about the challenge for Region C. We see all the other activity happening. The location of one of our own facilities, the slots parlor in the nearby or adjacent vicinity in this region. Have some of the economic dynamics change, and maybe that's something that we continue to look at on a parallel path if we decide to let one, two, or three of these applicants or projects kind of move forward. And I also think that we need to get, to the extent they can give us, some feel for the future of the tribe's proposal. And we always knew that would be a factor. But I don't know how we think about extending these deadlines for these requests without thinking of the end of May RFA 2 date and giving cities and towns, and more importantly, our internal team, the time to do what they need to do.
Well, if we do this, I definitely think we should take a relook at all the schedule. It would be totally not fair and not reasonable to not it. So I think as a practical matter, if we're talking about a material extension, we're talking about one that will change the whole schedule out by some amount of time. To be honest, if it were merely the Crossroads request, I'm somewhat similar, I guess, to Commissioner McHugh. If it were merely the Crossroads request, we're close, give us a little more time, I'm not sure that I would be inclined to go for that. Crossroads doesn't have a great record about being timely in its submissions to us going on a while now. But the New Bedford situation is pretty dramatically different. And will they get it or not? I don't know. But there is a huge change, and one that I would never have expected to happen. I thought New Bedford was dead as a doornail. And the fact that it has happened is, a huge change. And in that case, it brings me back to what we have repeatedly said were the two most important variables in this process. One is the integrity of the process, and two is competition, because only with competition can we get the best for the people of Massachusetts. And I think if we had another or two, that would be very much in the Commonwealth's interest and give us the greatest range of options given whatever else we come up with as time progresses. So I think it would be a real loss to stick to this sort of semi-technicality for the loss of the greater good, which is a competitive environment. And given, so I think if we do it, I think we should extend everything for sure by at least a similar amount. I would be in favor of granting the New Bedford request. And I think as a practical matter, if we were going to do that, there's really no harm in extending Crossroads too. If they make it, give them the same period of time. So given the weighing, the trade-offs here, there are tough trade-offs. But when you're talking about the adherence to a deadline versus the potential for competition for this license, I think I come down on the potential for competition.
I view competition differently, especially with what has happened already. Yes, the first time when we did our first solicitation, there was a big focus, attracting as many operators as we could, try to get a robust response. But I think we've learned a lot throughout, and we have awarded licenses that make this a very competitive and saturating region. There is, now we have 3 licenses to worry about their sustainability, their long-term profitability that we've awarded. Projects have begun, and they are effectively, in my view, competing with a 3rd commercial license, notwithstanding the prospect of a 4th one. So there is plenty of competition to go along here. The sake for, I think that the view of competition only for the phase 2 sake is a little misguided, in my opinion. There's still all these significant hurdles that they have to meet: the minimum capital investment, the suitability, very high bars in and of themselves, and they have to make money, the return on investment. So, it comes from the market that's available. I don't know that market has grown since we have awarded licenses in the rest of the state. The prospects have shrunk a little bit, with some of the comments that Commissioner Cameron was making.
But
For example, Connecticut is now talking about expanding, some of those hotels. The same case for Rhode Island, and New Hampshire continues to be a prospect. So I think talking about competition by region in this case is a little bit, I just view it differently. I know what you mean, and I know that was a big priority for us, but I think there's many other dynamics here that eventually affect our decision.
But I think that consideration is whether we would award a license at all, and to whom. If we do award a license, is it better to be close to Plainville or far away from Plainville, or close to Rhode Island or far away from Rhode Island? That issue of competition, is it the right thing to do? Does it fit with the tribal situation, whatever it is? That is one competitive environment that we will make a decision on when we end up making a decision whether there's one or two or three applicants. But the competition I'm referring to is just making sure whatever we get to consider in southeastern Mass, we clearly would be better off, I think, having competition in southeastern Mass for us to be picking among and on which to factor. What if we don't have any other bidders, we won't be able to think about whether it's a good idea to be closer to Plainville or closer to Boston, or farther from Plainville or farther from Boston. So I agree that there's various competitive situations or various competitive prisms, but this one I think is very much relevant.
But
for now.
if you presuppose that once you get two competitors, you're going to pick one, then your logic, holds. I think we're still in the prospect of, do we award a commercial license here, which gets us back to the to the point that Commissioner Cameron was making, and we don't need to for that decision. I think that there's a unique challenge in this region from way back when, because of the prospect of that fourth casino, that changes the economics significantly. So we may end up at the same place, just with a half step in between. But I think there's a case to be made to the point that Commissioner Cameron was making. Maybe we can just refresh the market study and try to come back to this sooner rather than later. I view it as already challenging in and of itself. The problem with our process is that analysis only comes after phase 2, when phase 2 is submitted. And that's our catch-22 of sorts.
Well, I'm not sure that it does. That's why I asked that question that I asked.
Yep.
And we have a phase 1 and a phase 2 process, and we've used the phase 1 and phase 2 process now for 3 successive license proceedings. That doesn't mean we can't tailor it in this one, to get at that question earlier rather than later, before there are votes and expenditures of energy on a whole variety of things, when we may conclude that the economics don't support a license in this area. I think that we're going to have one, and the idea that we may come to the end of the process and say, no, it's not economically viable to put a casino down there. But we also may come to the conclusion that it is. And if we come to that conclusion, it seems to me the Commonwealth's interests are much better served by having two to choose from rather than one. And there it is. It seems to me the competition drives something better. Besides the idea that you say to a community that's got a 17% unemployment rate and a brownfield in the middle of the city, that we're not going to do anything for your unemployment rate, or consider doing anything for your unemployment rate, or for cleaning up a brownfield that nobody else wants to clean up because you were 45 days late giving us something to think about, I have significant difficulty with. I want to just respond to Commissioner Stebbins' thoughtful point, is always thoughtful, about the impact on the IEB. And I recognize that there is an impact on the IEB from requiring the investigations, the background investigations, at a time when we're really ramping up for a variety of other things. This is a crunch time. But I do think that the applicants have to bear the cost of that, and we can find a way to deal with that if we need through consultants and others, and make the applicants pay the price of moving this back and putting it right in the middle of a time when we're occupied with a variety of other things. So I don't think commission constraints are a reason that we shouldn't extend the deadline. I think we can find a way to do it and find a way to make the applicants bear the cost of that.
I think we do communities as much of a disservice by just moving forward with this process and not addressing our concerns about the region sooner rather than later. So I would just advocate that we, no matter what the outcome of the extension is, we move forward sooner rather than later with an updated market analysis, an updated status on the tribal matters in the last couple of years, as well as pending litigation, and any other factors that we deem would help us, inform us better at this time about the region. I just think that's something that's really important. I think it's unfair to let people spend an awful lot of money with the understanding that we will, in fact, issue a license when, I just don't want that to be the assumption, no matter what we do with the
Just to be
the
totally
extension.
clear, we have never said that we would for sure issue a license.
I know,
Okay.
that's how I
went-
started the
right, okay.
conversation, but I just think at this time, it's time to be better informed about the issues, because so much has changed.
I'm with you on that. Interestingly, and you're particularly sensitive to this, Commissioner Zuniga, one of our bidders, if I'm right about this, Rush, we know to be very hard-nosed about the return on investment issue, and they at one point looked at Region C, tried to get us to make a concession in terms of the financial threshold that had to be attained. We decided, and I think we were right, we have not compromised on changing the fundamental amount of money that needs to be invested, because I think we've decided that destination resort casinos are what we want, and if the market can't bear it, then we won't have one. Rush has looked at all the same set of facts that we had looked at, and has come back later on now and said, you know what, we're in.
Well, but they've also asked repeatedly for us to weigh in on how we feel about this.
I'm with you on that.
So that's, I
I'm with
think
you on
that
that, too. I'm with you on
it's a reserved, we're in.
Okay, but
Well, at the risk of repeating myself a little bit, it's not just the 45 days. There's been a lot of time, and I understand, and I remember all the steps in between, the referendum and et cetera, et cetera. But there has been ample time for everybody, municipal officials and operators and deal makers and equity investors, and it just feels like that we've done this and we've had this discussion in some form or another a number of times. And I'm just picking up on the questions we were asking of our applicants. We could conceivably be here 45 days from now, having another similar request, saying we just need just a little bit more time. And one of the objectives, the same objective actually, economic development, jobs, revenues, works in the way of, sooner rather than later. It doesn't just point us in the way of, one day. So,
but
which makes the decision that much more difficult.
as I've said, if they were just saying we need a little more time, we're close, I think I would say no. But I do think that there is a dramatic change in New Bedford. That's different from just coming in and saying, hey, we just need a few more days. But I've said my point. Does anybody else have further comments to make before we put this to a vote? Seems to me we ought to do it seriatim. We ought to first vote on the New Bedford extension or not, and then vote on the other one. Somebody want to, Commissioner?
I'm not sure, are we planning to look at those two votes and then address a longer range schedule issue?
Well, I think we've all agreed that the longer range schedule will have to be readdressed. If we grant an extension, the longer range schedule will have to be changed to accommodate this. But I don't think we were going to plan on doing it now. I think we'd say to Director Day and the IEB, all right, 45 days, if that's what we were to decide, or have gone by, you got to go, and we've got a whole bunch of other things going on to try to open Plain Ridge on time. Let's rethink RFA 2 and whenever the decision date would be. So I think we've all agreed that we will have to reschedule to accommodate our internal needs if we decide to grant an extension.
Yes, and I agree with that, if I could just jump here. And I would very much like to think about, and when we have that second discussion, discuss the stress testing and the what will the market bear with and without a tribal casino, and do all the other things that Commissioner Cameron stated, because I too think we've got to come to grips, or at least narrow the focus by the time we get to the RFA 2 decision of what it is that we're going to do and what the economic circumstances are in which economic environment is within which we're attempting to make a decision. I don't know how to do that yet, and but I do think we need to discuss that as part of this scheduling discussion.
Well, I would venture that there's additional key data, some of it which we just heard here today, community commitments, payments, etc. In addition to a lot of points that we've ironed out that could enable our consultants to come back with a position paper very soon.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And not that, it bears repeating, but, this body has always been clear that just because we have 3 licenses to award doesn't mean we will award 3 licenses. And I think that's well known by everybody in this room, but certainly a message that bears repeating for the people in the communities that would be affected by this project.
Agreed. Somebody want to, so are we all right to vote first on New Bedford and then on the Somerset?
Sure.
Somebody want to?
All right, I move that the New Bedford, the time for New Bedford, for the New Bedford interests to file the completed RFA 1 application. That is the operator, the equity money, and the third prong.
Their complete table of organization.
Their complete table of organization be extended for 45 days from today.
Second?
If I can just add, I believe 45 days falls on a Sunday, so that
Okay, 46 days then for the Monday after. Okay.
Monday, May 4th.
Monday, May 4. Okay, great. Much more precise. Thank you.
I'll second. I think this will be a roll call. Commissioner Cameron?
Nay.
Commissioner McHugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Stebbins?
Yes.
Commissioner?
No.
And I vote yes. So the motion passes 3-2. Correct? Now, we will consider whether, my suggestion would be that what we consider is whether or not to give the second bidder the same deadline. I don't think we want to give 2 different deadlines. So as long as we've adopted a 45-day deadline, is that all right? Everybody okay with that? Okay. Commissioner McHugh, do you want to?
I move that the Somerset interests, the deadline for the Somerset interest to file their completed RFA 1 application, including the same 3 elements, table of organization, equity, and operator, be extended until May 6, 2015.
May 4th? Is it
May
4th?
6th.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, May 4th. Sorry. It's late.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Cameron?
Nay.
Commissioner McHugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Stebbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Zuniga?
No.
And I vote yes. So the motion passes 3-2-2. All right. I had a very, very hard, do you have some?
Well, I just recognize we have these temporary license requests, and I think there are a representative from KGM and Multimedia that's been here all day, and I know some.
No, I think we're going to stay. I had a really hard stop at 5, and I'm not thinking we'd go this long, and I was going to ask if it's okay with Commissioner McHugh if I adjourn myself and let you take over for the last, okay?
As long as you don't think there will be any close votes, you can go.
As long as what? Oh, yeah.
Are we ready to move on to finish the agenda at this point?
Commissioner McHugh, next.
Let's just wait for 5 minutes. Understandably, we're going to lose a few members of the audience who need to talk about things on their way out the door. Or want to talk about things. Okay.
I believe,
Director.
if they're still here, I believe Jason Peters from KGM and Laura Cox on behalf of Multimedia are here. They can come to the front if there are any questions for the commission on the license request. Commissioners, next on the agenda this afternoon is a request from Penn National for 2 temporary licenses for primary gaming vendors, KGM Gaming and Multimedia Gaming. Under CMR 134.12, upon petition to the commission by a gaming licensee, the commission may issue a temporary license if 2 conditions are met. 1, the applicant has filed a complete application with the commission, and 2, the gaming licensee certifies and the commission finds that the issuance of a temporary license is necessary for the operation of the gaming establishment, is not designed to circumvent the normal licensing procedures. I can confirm that the Division of Licensing has deemed both applications complete and the licensee has certified the requisite requirements. In both cases, Penn has indicated this temporary license is necessary for the operation of the gaming establishment, as the licensee is planning to purchase slot machines from both companies and have them delivered shortly in order to open on schedule. There is no information to suggest this is an attempt to circumvent the normal licensing procedures. The standard of review under CMR 134.12, Section 3, is that a temporary license may be issued upon a finding that the license is reasonably likely to be issued upon completion of the investigation. The first petition is for KGM Gaming, LLC. KGM Gaming, formerly known as Keystone Gaming Machines, LLC, was organized as a Pennsylvania limited liability company on November 5th, 2003. On March 4th, 2005, Keystone Gaming Machines, LLC, filed a certificate of amendment with the Pennsylvania Department of State Corporation Bureau to change the name on the company to KGM Gaming, LLC. The applicant has no direct entity affiliates and is comprised of 4 natural person members, managing member Howard Weiss, and we also have Jason Peters, Jason Cohen, and Michael Frattoni. 3 of the 4 members, including Howard Weiss, Jason Peters, and Jason Cohen, have been deemed qualifying individuals by the commission. Due to his minimal equity interest, Michael Frattoni has been waived as a qualifier. The registered office is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The applicant is organized to provide Ainsworth products, including slot machines, slot bases, custom casino seating, and casino signage, to and in connection with the licensed gaming entities. In short, they are a distributor for Ainsworth. Ainsworth was approved for a temporary license at the last commission meeting. KGM is licensed in over a dozen jurisdictions, including New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. A preliminary state police and financial division review has not produced any information that would preclude a finding that KGM possesses the requisite qualifications for the issuance of temporary license, and that therefore at this time appears reasonably likely to obtain full licensure after a complete review. I can go on to the summary on the second, and you vote at the same time if that is how the commission would like to.
Did you say they were a sub of Ainsworth?
Well, no, they're a distributor for Ainsworth.
A distributor for Ainsworth.
So they're a separate application, but they work together and they're linked.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll proceed, and maybe you can vote
Surely.
on the two together. The second petition is for Multimedia Gaming Incorporated. Multimedia Games was incorporated in the state of Delaware in 1993 under the name MVMC Acquisition Corporation. Through various name changes and mergers, the name was changed to Multimedia Games in April of 2011. It is a privately held closed corporation with 1,000 shares of common stock issued. All stock is held by Multimedia Games Holding Company, Inc., the parent company of Multimedia Games. Multimedia Games designs, manufactures, and supplies innovative standalone and networked gaming systems to Native American and commercial casino operators in North America, domestic and selected international lottery operators, and charity and commercial bingo gaming facility operators. With the recent acquisition in December of 2014 by Global Cash Access Holdings, Inc., its current workforce totals 900 employees and is headquartered in Las Vegas, Nevada. There are two entities which are deemed qualifiers under this application filing to be licensed as a gaming vendor primary in the Commonwealth. In addition to the aforementioned, suitability investigations are being conducted on Multimedia Gaming Holdings and Global Cash Access Holdings. The investigation extends to 4 individual qualifiers, David Hartman, Juliet Lim, Ram Cherry, and Randy Taylor. Multimedia Gaming is currently licensed in 31 states and licensed by 4 international gaming jurisdictions, including the Bahamas, Ontario, British Columbia, and Peru. Similar to KGM, a preliminary state and financial division review has not produced any information that would preclude a finding that Multimedia Gaming possesses the requisite qualifications for the issuance of a temporary license, and therefore at this time appears reasonably likely to obtain full licensure after a complete review. And both entities have submitted the requisite certifications under the CMRs. So
Okay,
at this time,
thank you.
they're petitioning, and there are representatives here that have any questions or can give you more information about the companies.
You've been here all day. And would you like to say, at least say a few words, each of you, or you're not required to, but if you'd like to say a few words, here's your opportunity.
Absolutely. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Commissioners. I'm Laura McAllister Cox. I'm an attorney with the law firm Greenberg Traurig, and I'm representing Multimedia Games. We thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. Very excited about being part of the vendor process here in Massachusetts, and we very much like to thank the licensing division and IEB for their work with us through this process. Appreciate it's been a long day, and it has been very interesting.
Well, that was succinct, so thank you very much.
Good
Thank you
afternoon,
for that.
Commissioners. Thank you for having us here. I just wanted to say that we're excited to be able to hopefully ship some of the first products into the state of Massachusetts regarding gaming machines and other products. We're excited to do business in the state.
And
Great.
I missed your name, sir.
Jason Peters, I'm president of
Jason
KGM, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Oh. Sorry to take you away from the company all day.
That's okay, I've been on email.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the commission approve KGM and Multimedia Gaming for temporary key gaming,
Temporary primary vendor license.
temporary primary vendor license,
All right.
subject to ultimate finding of suitability by the IEB.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Director Wells, you mentioned that IEB did have a chance to do a preliminary look, and,
And where state police and financial are both comfortable.
okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any other discussion? No. All right. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioners, on a related matter, given the volume and scheduling for anticipated temporary primary vendor licenses and key gaming employee licenses, I've been in discussion with General Counsel Blue about seeking delegation to allow the IEB to make or at least approve those temporary licenses during this time period while Penn is trying to open. And I'll turn that over to Catherine Blue regarding sort of the discussion on that, but I think that might be helpful given the commission's 2-week schedule between commission meetings that may become problematic, and this may be a helpful tool.
So the commission has seen before a temporary license is granted, the IEB does a preliminary review, but they come before the commission and they ask for your approval to issue the temporary licenses.
That's just what we
Just
just
what
did
we
right
did,
now.
Exactly.
yes. And it covers, the regulations require them to do that for all manner of licenses. So as we look forward to see what we need to do to make sure we're not holding up pens opening and that we're processing things through, I would request that the commission grant to the director of the IEB a delegation of authority to grant temporary licenses without coming before you, with the proviso that at the next available meeting, she comes before you with a list of the licenses she has granted, a brief summary of who they are, what they've been granted, what kind of review she has done up to that point, and also knowing that she will come before you for approval to grant a full temporary license and a full license down the road at some point.
So is this almost like a temporary license?
Well, I don't want to make it more complicated, but I think if we let the IEB director grant a
Delegation,
temporary license
yes.
through a delegation, she will come back to you for the permanent license.
Yes.
But in the interim, she can report to you, who she's granted it to, what kind of license it is, a little bit about the person or the entity that's received it. That license under the regulation is good for 6 months. You can decide that the delegation does not permit an extension of that if you feel more comfortable. But we just think that would allow us to process some of the necessary licenses in a more timely fashion.
Certainly, Director Wells, you would have done the same kind of review you did before granting that temporary license, which was the review
Right.
by state police and the financial investigators.
Yes, we in fact have a standard protocol for that, so that protocol would be followed before it gets to me. And we also have a protocol with a form where state police and I need to both sign off on the temporary license before it would be sent over to licensing before the commission. So we already have those procedures in place.
I think that's a suitable step instead of waiting every 2 weeks. We just want our licensee to be mindful of being a partner on the other end of this.
Correct.
And getting us the information and getting their key employees lined up and in as soon as possible, if they haven't done so already.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that delegation of authority, and just like you outlined, Council, for the temporary license, I think it would be very helpful in this crunch time for the opening of the slots parlor, and you cannot really predict how some of these requests are going to arrive, or how many arrive at any given point, and you need all the flexibility you can have, in my view, to grant those licenses without compromising their investigation, obviously.
Catherine, was the delegation request for included primaries, or was it for key gaming and gaming employees?
It's for all temporary licenses, because the regulation requires that all temporary licenses, no matter the type, come before the commission before they can be granted.
And for 6 months, essentially, 6-month temporary.
The temporary license could be for 6 months, but with no right to renew it for an additional 6.
And how are we going to keep track of how many of these things are out there? Maybe we don't have to worry about that. You will keep track of how
Yes.
many of these things are out there.
The temporary licenses?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir, I have a spreadsheet, and would have a tracking mechanism also in, I believe, in LMS.
So if we ever wanted to find out at some point how many of these temporary licenses were still temporary as opposed to,
Oh, yes, I have
having-
that,
and-
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think in Catherine's delegation request, we would provide you actually an update list, so you could be sure to know how many of those have been granted.
Okay. So, any further questions? What about the 6-month only, 6-month non-renewable piece of this that General Counsel Blue suggested we might do? it seems to me, notwithstanding the fact that the IEB is going to do a thorough job, that because we are departing from the regulation, that's a good sort of safeguard to put in place. Now,
Well, the
what-
temporary license by regulation is only good for 6 months. So I
Right.
think in effect, what it means is it can go through me once, but if you want to have an additional temporary license, maybe the investigation's not complete, something like that, then you have to go before the commission. I think that's more than reasonable.
Oh, I see. The temporary license expires in 6 months.
Correct.
It just can't be rolled over. You have to get a new one.
You have to get a new one.
Okay.
And that one comes to us.
And that would come before us. Okay.
I think that's fair.
So we could make that part of this authorization. The first one you can do, the IEB can do, and any more come to us. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Somebody want to make a motion? Commissioner?
I move that we authorize Director Wells and IEB to grant temporary licenses when they've finished their initial review, to be brought before us at the next commission meeting for an update. And they are good for 6 months only.
All right, is there a second for that?
Second.
Any further discussion on that seconded motion?
And you continue to report those periodically, right?
Correct.
You won't necessarily have to wait until the 6 months expire to
Right.
report to us.
All right.
Very good.
And no further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And there's one more matter before the commission. Attorney Lilios is here regarding the minor, I think it's the minor protection regulation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
So you saw this regulation, protection of minors and underage youth, for the first time on February 5th. And since that time, we've made some adjustments, especially to the advertising section, mostly based on the comments of Commissioner Stebbins at the February 5th meeting. There are 3 sections of this reg that require gaming licensees to have policies and procedures around keeping underage youth off the gaming floor, around safety measures for minors on the premises of the gaming establishment, and to prevent the service of alcohol to underage youth. And in turn, the internal control regulation requires that the commission approve those policies and procedures. The section that generated the comment on the February 5th meeting was the advertising section, which is 150.03. Both versions, the version you see today and the prior version, essentially prevented the marketing or advertising relative to gaming to specifically target persons under the age of 21. The version before you today stops there. The prior version elaborated by incorporating into the regulation itself the practices outlined in the responsible gaming framework, whereas this version is a more streamlined approach. In practice, factors would be applied in determining whether this regulation was adhered to when evaluating any marketing or advertising. So I just wanted to highlight what the change was. And the final portion of this regulation is a reporting regulation. And Mark, I don't know if you wanted to make any comments on that advertising section with respect to the framework.
Sure. The commission adopted the framework last fall, September of last year. And that's intended to be a guide for regulation, for policy, for practice. It's not necessarily intended to be taken verbatim and translated into regulation, but it's intended to be a guide, as I understand. And so with that, as we review the regulation that outlines advertising, I wanted to take a look at it through the lens of the framework and see that the regulation reflected the intent or the direction of the framework. which I think it does overall. It dawned on me, though, that the regulation may be misinterpreted, and so it was my recommendation that we, beyond that, beyond what is presented to you today, provide a little bit more direction about how a decision will be made on whether or not the advertising that would be in question would be indeed directed towards somebody that would be under the age of 21. I would recommend that while it wouldn't necessarily be reflected in the regulation as proposed would stand, but the responsible gaming framework would be referenced as a guide by which it would be, the advertising would be judged on whether or not it would be directed towards somebody under the age of 21.
So you would want that added to 150.03?
I think it's a good question. Does it need to be added, or can it be a policy that we would have that when advertising would come before the commission that would be in question, that the guidance by the responsible gaming framework would be used as a guide to judge whether or not it would be in violation of the statute?
I would be in favor of the latter because there's so much innovation in the whole marketing. There's new media. Trying to define it in regulation may be difficult. One of those things that you sort of make a judgment call when you see it. You first have to see it. And issuing guidelines or policy statements, directives, or modifying the framework whenever we need to strikes me as perhaps more appropriate in this case. I mean, the general language is here. It's unequivocal. The intention is unequivocal, but examples or where a blurry line has gone over is, in my opinion, a lot more difficult to try to define. So to codify in regulations may be difficult. I mean, it's not undoable, but my preference would be towards, having the flexibility to say, no, that crosses the line, take that out, and here's a policy, here's a statement, here's another guideline, or here's an update to the framework.
I agree with that sentiment. I think there's another mechanism for that as well. If I'm thinking about how this would play out if the IEB would look at an ad, somehow it would either come to their attention or be brought to their attention. They'd look at the ad and they'd make a judgment as to whether it violated this regulation. And if it did, they'd issue a cease and desist order. The target of the cease and desist order then could, if they disagreed, appeal, and it would go through the hearing process. And I think in a more general sense, we've at least talked superficially, and I want to come back to that conversation, General Counsel Blue, at some point, about posting decisions when we make them, so that you build a body of, in effect, case law that people can go to, and we could categorize them and index them as we post them, so that people could go and look at them and see what we've done. And that retains the kind of flexibility that we need to deal with particular fact situations, the criteria that we use, and the results that we achieve. And that's the sort of the most fact-sensitive way to proceed in a fact-sensitive area. So I would favor something along those lines rather than trying to put it in the reg, as you said.
I appreciate that approach. I want to thank Chief Enforcement Counsel Lilios for her work on this, and in Mark taking a look at this to make sure, or at least understand where the friction might be between the responsible gaming frameworks and this provision. The language before to me was pretty unclear, and the situation I was looking at is if I'm one of our licensees and I'm trying to advertise for something that's meant to be pro-family or part of that 60% non-gaming revenue piece of their business. You know, I was worried, you know, do they get caught if, you know, the logo of the casino is on the advertisement? So I think the way it's rewritten is much stronger. It will make our licensees more attentive to how they structure their advertising and marketing, but at the same time, not hamstring them as much as they're trying to promote, again, non-gaming activities. You know, I'm just thinking of MGM, you know, promoting their theater, their bowling alley, their ice skating rink or anything like that. Now, if they had something on the bottom which says, you know, come to our ice skating party, and by the way, you know, get 500 points on your rewards card, then I would expect Mark to step in. But I think the way it's been crafted, and I hear Mark's concerns, but I echo my two colleagues and think that we have an ability to address individual instances as they come up afterwards.
Okay. Any further discussion, thoughts, questions? Very, very, very thoughtful approach to this difficult problem. Somebody want to make a motion? We're now putting this into the formal
That's correct.
approval process,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that the commission give its approval to 205 CMR Section 150, correct? 150, and to move forward in the formal promulgation process.
All right. Is there a second of that?
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? I hear no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I hear no opposed. The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Thanks. Mr. Day?
That is our last item.
That was the last item?
That's the last item.
Oh, shucks.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. We're adjourned.